Hi everybody, I'm Kirsty. I am the Executive European Editor at Vogue Business, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this conversation. I'm going to kick us off. As we've sort of heard throughout today, one of the most powerful levers for decarbonisation is moving towards circular economy practices. And what we're going to talk about is how you really embed that in the upstream stages of the product life cycle. So we're going to be looking at factoring into design, how you increase the lifespan of a product from the get-go, thinking about your material choices, your production processes. We'll also talk about some of the challenges facing this attempt to move towards more circular economy thinking at those stages of production. And we'll talk a bit about some of the kind of efforts that are going on around how you measure that impact as well. And hopefully this will inspire some interesting conversations amongst yourselves, and we'll be sticking around and we'd love to hear your thoughts on some of these questions at the end. So I'm going to get the panel to each introduce themselves and sort of briefly outline how they embrace circular economy principles within their businesses, because we've got a really lovely variety of different companies represented on the panel. So Josephine, I'm going to start with you, sorry, because you're next to me.
No worries. Hi, everyone. My name is Josephine Phillips. I'm the founder of a company called SOJO, and circularity is really at the heart of everything we do because we are revolutionizing the repair industry. So essentially what we do is we enable brands to offer repair services to their customers through our technology and our operations. And essentially it's elongating the life cycle of their garments. It's obviously offering their customers a service that makes sure those items stay in their wardrobes for a really long time. And with every repair is, a circular behavior.
Thanks. Lucy.
Hello everyone, I'm Lucy Tammam. I am a sustainable couture fashion designer. My label's been going for almost 18 years. I've been working in sustainable fashion for about 20 years. So my work has really been focused on developing sustainable supply chains, mostly in India, but also across the world. And circularity has been really integral in that, but I've also tried to go beyond circularity and look at ideas of degrowth and offering fashion in a way that's more than just product, but also buying emotion as well.
Great, thanks. Mads?
My name is Mads. I head sustainability at Pandora. So if statistics hold, we're on about 1 out of 3 wrists or necks or ears in the room. And we put circularity kind of front and center in what we do to bring down our emissions. And we can talk about a couple of those things. We use only recycled silver, only recycled gold. And then we're disrupting not the repair, but the diamond industry by heading into lab-grown diamonds. So those are some of the things that we spearhead in our industry, quite a classical industry.
Thanks. And Ollie.
Hi, I'm Oliver Spencer. So I've been at it for a long time, and I don't know that we try deliberately to do anything. We just tread a pathway. It's a very simple pathway. We are a business that looks to resource things locally. We like to make things locally when we can. We like to do it slowly. We like to make the clothes that last for a long, long time. In fact, one of the things I always sort of say to a customer is that's going to look better in 3 years. We've kind of just been doing that way for a long time. It's very simple.
So let's start with talking about how we bring circularity into design. So at the very early stages, and I'm going to come to probably Lucy and Ollie to kick us off with this from the design point of view, how do you approach designing with a product's longevity in mind and the different stages that product will go through once it's been sold to a consumer? When it comes to increasingly, we now know, we're promoting repair, reuse, recycling. How are you approaching that at the very early design stages?
I can go first. I think there's a lot of different things to look at in the design stage. One of the things I've been trying to do in the last few years is make garments that are fully compostable, so using 100% organic cotton or now regenerative cotton, making sure the threads are cotton as well, so that all the details are considered too. Thinking about zero waste is really important, so designing that means that there's no or not too many offcuts and waste being created. and ensuring that design is really considering usage as well. So making sure that garments are going to be worn in a way that they don't break too easily. They don't, they can last in a good way. So things like putting in sweat patches, for example, areas that catch the sweat in your garments. That's something that used to happen a lot in like the 1930s. You find vintage garments that have these sweat catchers, and things like that can actually make a garment last a lot longer because that can easily be replaced, and then the actual main fabric lasts for a long time. So all of these small details are actually really integral to ensuring a garment will have a longer life.
It's funny, that seems like quite an ingenious idea. I wonder why it stopped being used.
Exactly.
I think Lucy's completely on it. It's exactly what we're trying to do. Just be very careful about the way. Well, luckily, actually, if you go to the beginning of a design process nowadays, you can go. You'll go to one of the fabric fairs, and the mills have really got their heads around the whole process now of producing not only beautiful cloth, but cloth that's fit for purpose and fit for the environment. And because they've done that step, that's been a massive help for all of us in the industry, because that's where we all start. We all start with the cloth. So that's one thing. Secondly, you need to very seriously consider where you're manufacturing and how you're manufacturing and with whom you're manufacturing. So to just send a tech pack abroad to a factory you know nothing about is just about the most stupid thing you could ever do. Just because it's cheap or just because he sounded nice on the phone, go and see them. Go and see what it's actually like on the ground. Go and walk around that factory. It's so important. And I always say the two most important places to be in our industry are on the factory floor and the shop floor. So the factory floor, you're able to judge what's going on, and you're able to see whether this is a good working environment with good people in there, making sort of clothing making clothing with love is what I like to say. And then the second part is on the shop floor. And the shop floor is the bit in the middle, by the way, I really don't enjoy. I quite like the design bit, but the shop floor is where I want to be. And that's the bit where you can educate the customer about what you're doing. And this whole process that we're entering in at the moment is only really any good if the customers understand what you've been up to, and they're properly educated, and they're educated on what to buy and how to buy. And that's, I think, going to be the most important thing in the future, because after all of these big organizations won't be big organizations without their customers. And if their customers vote with their feet and say, I'm not going to buy that sort of dress from sort of someone anymore because it's not made nicely and I don't like the fibers in it and so on and so forth, then that puts them out of business.
You mentioned before about garments that actually look better in 3 years than they do when you buy them. And I think that's quite interesting. Do you also choose your materials when you're at the design stage? Are you thinking about your materials in that way, like actually the sort of maybe perhaps more natural materials and the fact that they age in a certain way that's different to synthetics that might add to the quality of them?
I definitely do choose. I definitely prefer winter to summer, but that's like all menswear designers. I definitely like that. We love winter. We like autumn as well. So yeah, I mean, if I could, I'd make a corduroy suit, bury it in the ground for a year, and then serve it to the customer. I mean, it just looks so much better. It looks like it's been worn, lived in. It's got character. Yeah, I really like that, and that's why I really am so in love with the fact that kids at the moment are second-hand clothing shopping. It's like their biggest thing. It's like it's become what they do on a Saturday morning now. Get up and go out and buy second-hand clothes. Spend hours trawling for gems in shops. And I just think that is, I mean, certainly 3 or 4 years ago, they weren't doing that at all. And anything to get them off doom scrolling and out into the world and doing something like that. So it's a change of culture, and I'm really about that change of culture. So,
but to have those products that, you know, will be resold and next generation will come along and cherish those pieces, you do need to be designing products that will last. And I'm interested to know, Josephine, if you've got any sort of takeaways or learnings from what you see across SOJO in terms of, I guess, like common mistakes or flaws that you see coming through that actually tell you that this is something that just continuously is being done improperly at design stage, where we could perhaps make quite a big difference if we were to tackle, you know, if designers tackled that en masse.
Yeah, definitely. I think your point, Lucy, about the sweat patches is super interesting, because I think there are really key areas on garments where we know there are issues, and yet actually nothing that much has been done from a design point of view to tackle it. An example is even just like elbows, for example, whether it be on knitwear or on different garments, they do wear away. So a really, really common place for us to be doing darning on jumpers is on their elbows. But it's not like we've thought about, should we be making an elbow different at all than the rest of the garment? Or similarly, actually, we see the same with like thighs on denim, cycling, even other types of trousers. We particularly have a brand who does a lot of linen trousers, and there's a lot of wear that goes on around the thighs that we then replace, but we actually don't replace it with the same single linen, we replace it with a double linen. So they've provided us with the fabric, which is great, but we do a double facing and then put it back in, and that's because we know that the rubbing will continue to happen and it will probably wear down again. No, exactly. Yeah, so ultimately they didn't have these insights, because without the repair service and therefore the repair numbers and data and the insights and the kind of feedback that we give them, they're not able to make those decisions. But that's the exact type of thing. I mean, again, we're only reasonably early on in the partnership with them, but the whole point of us feeding back that data is for them to make different design decisions, which is great. But I think also beyond that, there's actually a lot that can be done in terms of designing with the repairer in mind and with the repair in mind. So another example is with like outerwear, for example. The way, if you get like a cut in your puffer jacket, the way our outerwear repairer would go about it is maybe looking where in the garment can I get the exact same fabric to then recreate that panel. Often we find that in pockets. So you can open up the pocket, lay it out, and that's the exact same material on the outside, and you can put it on the patch, replace it entirely, and it's completely invisible, like as good as new, the whole panel's been replaced. The sad thing is when you go in the pocket and it's just not the same material as the outside, in which case you can't use it. And so we're maybe then sourcing a different fabric and it doesn't look as perfect. So, sorry, my mic is coming down. But yeah, essentially, like even we've also had jumpers come in that have actually a little bit of yarn on the tag, which is specifically for a repair down the line. So I know there's small things like this that actually like thinking about how can something be repaired? How can we support that repair by ensuring there's extra fabric in the garment that can be used down the line is another great way. And then the final thing I'd say as well is one thing that feeds into actually what you were saying, Oliver, in terms of like a garment looking better in a few years' time. A lot of brands, particularly with next-gen materials, don't actually know what that is going to be in a few years' time. And what we've found in doing repairs is that some of the new materials that brands are implementing are not actually as durable, or if they're next to skin or if they're next to sweat, the deterioration that's happening because it's a new type of fabric that they're trialing is problematic. So again, it's about feeding that back and saying, great material, great impact at the beginning stage, but 2.5 years in, this is what's happening to it. And you only would know that after true wear and tear and kind of sweat and body and all that kind of thing. So that feedback is really important for those kind of material design decisions as well.
I want to move on to talking about sourcing materials, because it's obviously a huge area where brands can make a big difference when it comes to their impact and their carbon emissions. Mads, you mentioned about moving to using purely recycled gold and silver. That's a reasonably recent development. So tell us about that journey and why that was so important to Pandora, and kind of the challenges that you had to overcome.
So we kind of came at this from, making an analysis of what are the biggest impacts that we have on our surroundings, not just what we do in our own manufacturing, but in everything. And the two things that come up on top is the raw materials, silver and gold, simply because the mining of these metals is requiring a lot of energy. And so it became quite clear that if we could change that, that would be the single biggest thing we could change about our whole company. And so we decided about 4 or 5 years ago to say we're going to move entirely to recycle silver or recycle gold. That would bring down the emissions of everything we do by some 20%. Everything included, all suppliers included. So it's a real big move. But the problem was we couldn't just call somebody and say, hey, ship over. We buy about 340 tons of silver every year. So and that wasn't available in recycled kind of label. So what has happened is that we work with that whole chain of suppliers, some 40 companies, and help them redesign the way they deliver to us, install new equipment, separate streams of silver and gold so that we could get the good stuff that we wanted. And the beauty of the whole thing is that this actually has zero to do with the design of the product, because silver is silver. So I brought these two here, right? This is silver grains, and that's what we get into our factories, small grains of silver, and then we turn it into jewelry. And one is recycled, and the other one is straight from a mine. But there is no difference to any of us. There's a huge difference to the planet. So the one that is recycled is about 1/3 of the footprint than this one. So there you got like, and for gold, if it had been gold I carried here, it would be even bigger difference, right? So we made that choice and ran into the trouble of kind of circularity isn't easy today. So these value chains, they don't exist, and they're also more expensive. So we pay more for this one than that one, although it's the same, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But that journey we've been through, and now we're kind of at the point where all suppliers, everything we do ourselves, run on these materials, and we continue to work our way through other metals that we're using, other parts of the product, so that in the end it'll be all a circular product, if you will. Yeah.
And tell us about the lab-grown diamond side of things.
Then you got the diamond, yeah. So that's what we then put in the ring or the bracelet. So diamonds is kind of a real interesting thing in the world of what's good for the planet. In that it's a very old product, and it's, if you're a little bit boring, it's carbon that is compressed. That's the definition of a diamond, and so that's possible to create in a lab now, to the extent that it is just as much a diamond as the one we dig out of the ground. The one from the mine has been about 1 billion years on the way. We do the same in a lab, and it takes about 3 weeks. We brought that to the market as the first big brand, and it's really turning the diamond market on its head, because these products are both cheaper to the consumer, but they're also a lot cheaper for the planet. So if you want to talk CO2, it's about 5% of a mined diamond when you buy at the lab diamond, right? So this makes the whole difference, and it's an interesting case, just like the silver. You can't tell the difference, but there's a different story. And of course, what's at play right now is, what are we thinking about this as consumers? What's the story I like? What's the kind of emotional appeal around this? So what we're at is a big journey of showing people around the world that this is the future of diamonds, and it's going quite well. So we probably will see a different diamond market in not so many years ahead. So we put those two things together, and that's kind of what is bringing our emissions down. We've grown over the past 5 years, the company, some 45%, so it's going well, and our emissions are down 17% in the same period of time. So we're really kind of looking at this decoupling of economic activity from the imprint we put on the planet.
Yeah, but it's not been easy to do, right? I mean, it sort of sounds relatively easy the way you're describing it, but I'm sure it had plenty of challenges, and that's what I'd like to get at a bit more is what, for anyone who's kind of on the design side, when you're sourcing lower impact materials, what are the biggest challenges you're facing? You know, are there limitations to the alternatives that you're looking at, and Josephine talked about the fact that some of the next gen materials that are being developed, you just don't know how they're going to wear over time. So how do you kind of approach trying to find lower impact alternatives? Lucy, maybe you could go.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of challenges. Being able to meet minimum order quantities, which I know is something that was talked about upstairs, is a big one. Being able to get exactly what you want is really hard, because if you've got a specific design in mind and you know what material you want, but there isn't a sustainable version of that material, you've got to go and actually make it. So this is where being in touch with your suppliers is really important, because you can actually go and you can source the cotton, for example, and you can go to the weavers and you can give them exact specifications. But it's a long journey. I mean, I've been ordering fabric, some hand-woven fabric, which I put the order in June, and it's only just being woven now. So it does take time, and you've got to be prepared to wait. Good things come to those who wait, and let that journey happen. But I think it then adds so much story to those materials as well, and you've got more than just a material. You've got a whole, evolution and the story of all the people who've been a part of it, and I think that adds so much value as well.
I want to make a point to Mads, because you must have lobby groups going at you from sort of De Beers to, I mean, these people they literally own that world. It's a monopoly. Are they?
Not anymore.
Have you got big burly men bouncing on your door, ready to
but
smack you up a bit?
He's pretty burly himself.
He's pretty big, I know, but...
No, but there's a good saying in PR, which is that a little bit of conflict is good for publicity. So we believe we have the good story. And so we don't mind that debate in the media. We base it on facts. So we have engineering companies that are calculating the footprint and the data around these things, and we put those reports out. But it doesn't free us from the noise, of course. Right?
It's a great story. I was lucky enough to be in Namibia, and if you go to the Skeleton Coast, you are allowed to walk on 50 miles of that coast. The rest of that coastline, which is truly massive, is all owned and leased by De Beers from the government for diamond drilling, mining, all the way up there. So the impact on the environment is absolutely colossal. So yeah, great, well done.
Thank you.
And in terms of your own sourcing, I was like, let's keep talking about diamonds, but stay on
Well, you
track.
started it.
No, sorry. In terms of your own sourcing, do you look at, are you considering lower impact material choices? Are you looking at next gen?
So really just simple things like, if I can get the wool off a moor in North Yorkshire and have it taken to Lancashire, spun, and then made into a heavyweight woolen coating, and then down here to Bow, to our unit, and have it made into a big overcoat down here. That's pretty tight for us. That's quite good. We don't have to, the buttons, they come from Italy. They're a nut button. So that's okay too. Even ground horn buttons are good as well, because they just cap the horn regrows, and then you make this ground, and that works too. So we just try to naturally look at the easiest way of doing things, and not to make if you make too big a deal out of the process becomes difficult. So if you make things simply and properly, then it can just look after itself. And I think that one of the things that you're probably going to go on to this in a minute, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think that the government should be offering tax credits back to small businesses that are treading a very sustainable path and are able to prove their circularity credentials. And there has to be a form of pat on the back for that kind of thing. We work with a business called Recom, where we complete the whole circle. Well, so Recom is a business that came into our lives a couple of years ago, and we sent out this initiative to our customers and said, look, if you're not wearing it, if it's threadbare, bring it back to us so we can recycle it all for you. And we're going to do it through this company called Recom, and they're going to be able to tell you what's happened to your garment so that it can go through the system. It might become sofa fill. It might get chopped up and respun into recycled yarn. It's a whole process. We sort of did a film. We did a load of things around this, a bit of fanfare around it, and got a few people involved. I mean, I have to say I've been really disappointed so far. We've had we've had in 2 years, about a ton of garments. That's it. Yeah, I was expecting to have a lot more back, but we make them too well, so they don't come back. And we asked the customers about this. Why aren't you giving us more stuff back? Get up, get on with it, do it. No, I don't want to give it back. So it's fine. We do offer them, if they bring clothing back to us, we do offer them a discount on their next purchase. So there is a customer retention thing going on there, which works very well too. Now, we're a very small little business, menswear, simple. But if you take that to a much bigger business, and you get them to go through that process, that could undoubtedly have a massive impact, especially on a high street level. It could be a fantastic thing to do. Businesses like M&S have always had a good effort in that direction. But it's very, very important, and increasingly at the moment, the boardrooms are saying, no, we don't want to know about this. This is costing us too much money. And the only way we're really going to persuade them is if the government says, well, hey-ho, if you don't do it, we're going to tax you, and if you do it, we'll give you a bit of tax back. And that's what I'd like to persuade the government to get their head around. Is there anyone here from government?
They're not going to put their hands up now.
No, they're certainly not, are they? Okay.
Last thing I want to sort of touch on before we hand back over to for the sort of workshop element is, and Mads, you talked about kind of, you've done some work around showing how showing the impact of moving to sourcing lower impact materials. Something that we've talked briefly about before, Josephine, was the RAP report that came out recently, which I know you were part of. And I think this, what that did was enable, it sort of standardizes the measure of displacement, right? And I'm going to get you to explain this in layman's terms, so I'm not doing a very good job. And I think it feels like that's very important, to be able to sit there and say to government, to consumers, to explain it in a very clear, standardized way, why embedding circularity from the very start of a product's life cycle right to the end of it is so important. Tell us a little bit about that report and why that's been sort of helpful for you.
Yeah, I definitely think your point about you kind of need some sort of quantitative measure to be able to have some of the conversations. Otherwise, it is a little bit too broad. Obviously, repair is good. Circular services are good. Resale is great. Take back is great. All these things are great, but actually being able to have numbers behind it is really important. And so the work with RAP and the displacement rate was essentially saying, if you repaired a garment, what rate and kind of what does that say about whether you did or did not stop a new purchase from happening? And the displacement rate for repair was 82%. And given that you have kind of average impact numbers around a new puffer jacket or a new t-shirt or a new pair of jeans, you're therefore able to say that if this brand did 5,000 repairs of jeans, let's say, this is the quantifiable CO2e and kind of water savings that happened, which I think really feeds into things like a brand sustainability report. So if they actually have things like metrics and targets they have to hit by 2030, they finally have numbers to be able to contribute to that. So that's really impactful and important. But also, as you say, in rooms where you're trying to talk about things being positive, or you're trying to say we want kind of tax breaks, etc., you have to have kind of the numbers to be able to benchmark it against other companies and to hit targets to then be able to get those benefits. So it's super exciting to see things like reports and case studies happening and a quantifiable way to say this is the positive impact we're having by embedding the service or by being a service provider.
I wonder whether it will help with that storytelling piece when it comes to talking to the consumer. And I know that's something, Ollie, that you have views on, is like how we bring the consumer on board with all of this. And I'd be curious just to finish off on, like, get everyone's views on.
I'd love to just add, really quickly for the consumer piece, is that, for example, if you repair your puffer jacket, it's the equivalent of saving 300 washing cycles. And that's very layman-like, is essentially what the report
you can get your head around it.
Exactly. And I think that communication of like, yes, I repaired my jacket, but, and then this is a way to say, this is something you can understand and really get behind.
Yeah. Mads?
But we also have a dilemma, because when we ask our consumers if they choose our products because of this, right? So now it's all recycled and lab diamonds. That's not what they mentioned at first, unfortunately. So most of us in the room would say, no, it's a nice price, I like the design, and so sustainability kind of stops at the doorstep for most of us. So the incentives have to happen before the consumer. Like it's hardly going to be what's going to, at least for a mass brand like us, going to be driving the business case for going sustainable. That has to be for other reasons. And so that premium that we pay about $10 million extra every year to source recycled silver instead of non-recycled. That's not going to come home by raising the price for the consumer. It's going to come home from being kind of a responsible company that people choose to work for, or avoiding taxes maybe in the future, or other reasons. So it's kind of, there's a dilemma around the consumer. We're not voting entirely with our wallets, right? Yeah.
I think it's always been like that sustainability has always been a nice bonus, an added extra, but it's always been about design, it's always been about product. A consumer will only buy what they want.
And money, yeah.
And money.
Yeah.
And money.
Yeah. Ollie, any thoughts you want to add?
I've said enough, probably. No, I think that educate the consumer, I think, is the most important thing, and I think is the thing that, unfortunately, the dot-com era has got the consumer into some really stinkingly bad habits. Ordering, going online and pressing click, basket this, click, 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 click. Then they get it delivered. God knows where it came from, so I'm not going to talk about that. But it arrives, they try it on, and they choose one thing, and the other 6 things go back. The only problem with the 6 things going back is there's nowhere for the 6 things to go, because the people that made them don't want them back, so they just go straight to landfill. And
the cost of putting it back into the system is higher than
the company that's doing this doesn't tell the consumer that this is going to happen. So that part of the education process is massively missing. And if the consumer knew that it was going into a landfill, would they order the same 6 dresses? I mean, there just has to be legislation around it. You have to be able to say what is going to happen to these garments when they are discarded by the customer. And I think that is I think the education process is the most important thing, because the consumer at the end of the day is going to have a massive play on what the boardroom are going to do.
Yeah. Right. Food for thought. I'm going to hand back over so that you can all now discuss whether you agree with us or not, and then feedback.